Yeah.
danger for
And
sure.
I mean, there's so many lawsuits coming out against big tech right now.
Hmm.
I think this is going to set like a precedent of, are judges going to hear big tech lawsuits, and which way are they going to rule?
Yeah, I agree. Like, did you hear about the deplatforming ban that came through in Florida?
Yeah. Well, some of that is also come through on Texas.
Hmm.
And so supposedly what I've heard is that Texas actually has a better bill that's going to protect smaller creators against big tech,
Hmm.
but Florida was just the first one to get it out.
Hmm.
I mean, DeSantis is ready to get anything out, isn't he?
Well,
A
I'm I'm glad that at least one governor is standing up to big tech in some way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's definitely a challenging thing to navigate, especially because with that big tech can bring jobs to your state. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the big thing, you know. Do you risk pushing them out? But on the other end, there's so many other like there's so many of the, I guess not big tech, but medium-sized tech companies are moving to Florida right now to get away from, California and their rules and their taxes and all that. And the COVID mandates that are still in place in California are still driving smaller and medium-sized tech people, and they're all establishing in Miami. Like evidently Miami is blowing up as another tech hub,
Mm-hmm.
Oh
which
shit.
is, kind of cool. And so a bill that's going to protect the smaller tech industry, I think is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
totally agree.
also, there's a lot of money in Miami too. Like, there's a lot
Mhm.
of wealth to fund those startups too. A lot of things are should be changed in the next couple of years.
Mhm.
Maybe we would have to redraw some state lines soon.
Heck yeah. That's where I was leaning into. So
Real quick,
another
real quick, but before you jump into that, Landon, thank you for that follow.
Thank you, Landon.
Thanks, buddy. We appreciate it.
What's up, crazy?
Uh yeah, no. So it's nothing's really happened in the matter so far. But in the last few days, well, over the last few years, there's been a push for something called Greater Idaho, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some counties in California and Oregon who don't feel aligned with, so like Oregon for one, right? Oregon's the big state that this is happening in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So everybody east of Portland doesn't like what's happening in Portland, right? But Portland has more people. So when laws get passed, Portland can overrule the rural areas. So the rural areas think that their needs will be better met by the people of Idaho rather than the people of Portland. So there's been a big push to for some counties to switch from being in the state of Oregon to the state of Idaho. And there's a few counties in California that have talked about it, but the big push is coming from Oregon. And
Five
the actual
counties, right?
yeah, and the five counties and the county governments are actually voting on this. And so far they're in favor of doing this. Now, the downside, what's stopping anything from happening is that both state governments would have to vote on this and then the federal government would have to approve it. So,
Wow.
it's not really going, I definitely don't think with the current administration that they're going to allow something like that to happen because
Oh,
Oh no. Oh no.
oh no,
We're
crazy
not gonna
froze.
let it because why?
He froze mid
Question.
sentence.
We leave you quivering with anticipation.
Anticipation. There he is frozen. Oh no, crazy.
Why'd you gotta go?
What's
I
what's the
don't
next
know.
word?
Because of why?
Call an ambulance.
There he
Hey, there he
is.
is.
For him,
Okay.
he's back.
So
Okay.
for some weird reason, my internet connection just keeps swapping from landline to Wi-Fi, and it freezes me every time. So, but
Oh,
I'm back.
disable your Wi-Fi and just you're good.
Well, that's
That
the
should
issue.
do
The
it.
Wi-Fi is giving me the best signal at the moment.
Oh
But
no.
Oh God, we need to
so,
fix your. Anyway, go on.
with our current administration, I don't think they would allow this to happen because you would be taking away from Democratic controlled state and giving to a Republican controlled state, right? So it doesn't make sense for them to okay this.
Mm.
And there's a few other things, but this is really kind of getting the idea of secession versus redrawing of states in people's minds.
Mhm.
And I know here in Texas, a representative from Fredericksburg has already
Hey, J-Bub.
proposed a bill of secession, and they're reintroducing that bill to kind of jump on this tidal wave.
Oh my god. I don't even know what to think about that. But going back to what you're talking about, Oregon and Idaho particularly. Oregon, and we covered this in our past episodes, have just passed that legislation where they approve psychedelics as a form of like medicinal use, right? So it makes sense that this is the outcome from legislation like that. You have people who, I mean, Oregon in general has gone through so much this past year, especially, with what is that? The Portland, where they took Oregon last summer for the protests. Was it in Oregon? No, that was Seattle, right? That was Washington.
No, yeah, that was in
Seattle.
Portland.
Was it Portland?
You're talking about the autonomous zone.
Yes, that zone. So, it makes sense that these more rural areas are like, you know what, like I stand for change in some ways, but this is the way I believe in, and I think that this other state would be more favorable to, I guess, my opinions, which I can understand that. And at that point, shouldn't that be a state to state issue and not a federal issue? Like that would
Yeah,
be
no, you're right.
that would be my assumption.
And I could see the federal government coming in and the secession, like a state trying to leave.
Mm.
But on the other side, this is like people not feeling represented, and all they want to do is move to another state, but they just don't want to move, right? So, I mean, if the states agree on it, I think that it would be fine, or at least
Yeah.
if the people voted on it. If the
Yeah.
people voted and they say we want to be part of Idaho, and Idaho says okay,
Well,
then what's
yeah.
what's going to stop them?
Oregon State. The representative. No, honestly, that sounds cool to me. Like realistically, we are all nation, even though we're all different states. We should.
But honestly, like every state is different, right? Like if you lived in California and you left California because you didn't agree with those policies because you couldn't change them, then leaving to another state that better reflects your values is unfortunately the answer, and that's what maybe these people are experiencing. Now, whether or not that's the right call, I'm not a citizen of Oregon or soon to be Idaho to make that decision.
Yeah, and if anything from the census tells us that, so for like the first time, California lost seats in the House of Representatives, right? Texas
Mhm.
gained, California lost, and I think Pennsylvania lost. So these huge Democrat strongholds, people are fleeing. Something's not right, right? Something they're voting on, their policies are something's wrong with them. Right. So
I think too
instead of listening to these people in these areas, they're just continuously like, no, you're wrong, and just forcing their opinions upon these rural areas. And how do these people what other option do these people have at this point?
Yeah.
that remains to be seen. And I think too, a lot of people are looking for some type of balance too. Like the scales have been tipped from one side to the other, especially the last 4 years, right? On no matter what side of the pendulum that you're on, it's either extreme radicalism, left or right, and a lot of people are looking for that middle ground. Like, okay, I agree with this, but I also understand the rationality of this. So where do those people fit in?
Yeah.
And especially on the West Coast right now, it does come off that they are censoring that middle of the road opinion, right? And so, like we were talking about big lawsuits. I mean, the Steven Crowder lawsuit is one of the biggest lawsuits of our time, but you
Mhm.
don't hear anything about it.
Yeah, same thing
You
happened in
know?
the H3H3 lawsuit. Like they
Yeah,
suppressed the crap
exactly.
out of that. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going up against Google about censoring moderate opinions. Like that's the whole point of the lawsuit. And we have you even heard about it? You know what I mean? Besides one of us talking about it, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's an issue.
Yeah, I agree. So when do we find out if like all this will go down with Oregon and Idaho?
We probably that's the bad part. I mean, this has been going on for years at this point.
Oh
So
my gosh,
Really?
really? It's
yeah. So I don't think anything will ever come of it past this, but it's at least a fun little idea for us to bat around, you know? Like redrawing states.
well,
Or
technically, don't we already have a 51st state, Dom? Like, didn't they make DC its own
yeah.
state?
No, they can't make DC its own state.
Well, they
That would be
already
crazy.
passed something saying that it would be a 51st state and it would get
Or
representatives.
maybe it was a bill proposed.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
proposing a
Sounds about
bill,
right.
but that would
Proposing.
be that's a really bad idea because the whole purpose of DC is that it's it houses the federal government, so
Mhm.
no state has leverage over it. If it was a state, then a governor more or less would have leverage and can affect national policy. So if we're going to make a 51st state, it should be Puerto Rico.